Of the San Mateo County Harbor District Board of Harbor Commissioners special meeting for June 29 to order. May we have a roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Here.
Commissioner Brennan?
Here.
Commissioner Carali?
Present.
Commissioner Pirovano?
Here.
President Mateusz?
Here. This is the time of evening that we will take public comments and questions. At this point, I have two. First person, Sean Cartwright, please.
I'll let James go first.
Okay, James Lee Hahn, please.
Thank you. Good evening to the commission. Before I get into my main comments, I just wanted to make a request. I noticed on the agenda that commissioner statements for up to 5 minutes max are now at the beginning of the meeting. I was wondering if the president would be so inclined if the board could move that to the end of the meeting, especially since, in light of certain agenda items that are going to be discussed today, I'd like to hear comments from all commissioners, if they have any, based on what's discussed at this meeting. Aside from that, I just want to mention really quickly that I saw a recent article in the Daily Post that credited Commissioner Chang Karali with quite a lot of the recent improvements that the Harbor District has made, and I just wanted to correct that and point out that these improvements have been happening for the last 3 or 4 years. They have not started just because one commissioner was appointed about half a year ago. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. Also, I'd like to, again, ask Commissioner Chang Karali to resign from her position on the Menlo Park Fire District Board. Again, many of us in the county who are watching the Harbor District feel that serving 2 offices at the same time is incompatible. There have been previous cases in the county where this has been found to be incompatible, and so we'd like to, again, ask her to resign. Finally, as someone who attended the last LAFCO meeting this year and the one last summer, I just really wanted to congratulate the district on the progress that's been made over the last year. I think it was really great that Supervisors Horsley and Tissier both thanked the board and the general manager for all the great work you've been doing over the last few years and the improvements that have been made. Please keep it up. Thank you so much.
Sean Cartwright, please.
Wow, it's like Lilliput. I actually wanted to reference the article and say that it seems like part of the reason that the grand jury report is negative is because someone on the board definitely has a friend in journalism. I wouldn't actually call it journalism, but they just know somebody who happens to write for a paper. And definitely uses that to their advantage. And I'm just concerned because one of the reasons that people brought up in the past to go against each other was legal fees, et cetera, and the cost of legal fees, and I'm sure that are being incurred here in the fire board, trying to figure out if this person is in fact a legitimate member of the board, seem to be going up and up and up. And the person was only installed on this board on what, the 3rd, 4th, 5th vote, so it wasn't by any decision from the beginning, and it was definitely against the will of the public. A lot of public comment regarding that. And all the Brown Act violations that are going on at the fire district is also cause for concern. And so just waiting to see how many happen here. And I'm concerned that her efforts to stop the Half Moon Bay high school girls from having volleyball practices at Pillar Point. I mean, what do high school girls have to do with anything, and why bother attacking them and preventing their volleyball practices? I would think that everybody on the board would be interested in furthering interactions with the community instead of stifling interactions with the community. And just like I asked her to resign at the fire district, I'm going to ask her to resign today. And actually, I would think that you guys would want to do that as well.
That concludes the public comment part of the evening. So I'm going to defer to my commissioners about commissioner comments. We specifically moved this for time-wise to make sure commissioners are held and the meetings didn't go too long. What's the will of the board here, whether we start with comments or follow?
I would just rather keep the agenda the way it is.
Keep it the way it is.
Okay, this is part of the evening when we have commissioner comments. So do we have any comments from our commissioners? The only comment I would make is I was personally a little disappointed with the grand jury report. As I stated, it seems like there was a foregone conclusion, and they reached into old history and apparently nothing to do with reality, and the current direction of the board doesn't reflect the fine efforts of our new general manager, nor how the board has tried to come together and work to build a good budget, a good 5-year CIP. We've got a number of very positive things going on right now, and it's just amazing that somebody could reach that conclusion without looking at reality of what's going on now. We've got so many different positive things. Anyway, I'm not going to go on too much longer about that. Commissioner Corrali.
Thank you. I just wanted to just say that I have not taken a position on the volleyball court situation because I unfortunately missed those 2 meetings because I was on college tours with my youngest, he will be a freshman in college, and those meetings that I missed, I informed the chair and the general manager. So if there's anyone who would like to talk to me about that as a member of the public, I'd be happy to talk to them. But I have taken no position on that. So I'm sorry that the members of the public think this way, but that's just not true. Thank you.
I have a comment I'd like to make.
Commissioner Rowland.
Thank you. So picking up on what President Mateusz said, I just wanted to let the public know that my comments regarding the civil grand jury's report can be found online. There is a letter to the editor published in the Half Moon Bay Review today, and also an op-ed published on Everything South San Francisco's website, and there'll be an op-ed published in a newspaper on Friday, and there's also the same op-ed is published on several other websites, including my own website, which is sabrinabrennan.com. All you have to do is go to the journal section of my website, and you can read the full op-ed published there, as well as other places. And if anybody has any questions about the op-ed, please feel free to email me, or you can post your questions online. Thank you.
It's part of the evening when we have a consent calendar. We have 3 items on consent: bills and claims, property and liability insurance through SDRMA, and Radden Rescue Vessel Restoration. Is there a motion to take these 3 items on consent?
So moved. I'll second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Corrali?
Aye.
Commissioner Paravano?
Aye.
President Mateusz?
Aye. Okay, number 4, under discussion part E, is information-only presentation, Oyster Point Marina and Park Development Proposal, presentation by Greenland, USA.
Thank you, President Mateusz, and this is provided as a background for a potential project that this commission discussed in 2011 as part of an MOU with South City, and we'll provide some background to the next item, which is a request to approve an assignment of the lease for the properties. In the audience this evening, we do have Clara Tang from Greenland, USA, Paul Stein from SKS, Zane Gresham, attorney for SKS Insurance Team, Steve Mattis with the City of South San Francisco, and Russ Cooper with SKS as well. And with that, I would turn the floor over to our visitors.
No, I just got a couple of late public comments, so Just,
We're done with public comments.
The
it
public,
was on this item.
the public comments should go after the presentation so that,
Yeah, they get the information.
All right. Generally, we take them before, as we can see over the past 2 years, but I'm willing to do that.
I agree.
Commissioners,
Ever-changing process.
And I'll move.
Great, thank you very much.
Slides
Great.
as you indicate.
Commissioners, my name is Paul Stein with SKS Partners. We're partners with Shorenstein, who in 2011 secured entitlements and a development agreement and development disposition agreement with the city of South San Francisco. And what I wanted to do was to give you an overview of what has been approved and making sure that you understand at a high level what has been approved, what is intended to happen. I will apologize in advance if there are some detailed questions I can't answer.
All right, that's good.
I'm pretty facile with most of the facts, but there are possible that some of the detailed questions I don't have. So please feel free to ask questions as I go through this, if there's any questions or concerns. So,
can I just get
yes.
a clarifying question in? Are we going to go over the agreement that was signed in 2011? Is that going to come after this presentation? I'm just trying to understand what we're covering here.
Well, this presentation is an introduction to Greenland USA and the proposed project. The matter for discussion and decision by the commission is simply the request for approval of an assignment of a lease. The 2011 agreement, I haven't put that in the board package. It is on our website. Hadn't anticipated that being a part of the discussion, but in as much as Steve Mattis is here and I'm here and Steve Muir is here, we'll answer any questions about that
Well,
agreement
since-
as we're able.
I was hoping Stephen Miller would be able to explain that agreement to us. Is that something that we could do after the presentation?
Let's go through the presentation and maybe some of that will become clear during the course of the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
great. Thank you. So this is Oyster Point as it sits today. SKS and Shorenstein acquired, actually, if you go back, please, we acquired the properties that are immediately on the other side of Oyster Point Boulevard. And at one point, we acquired 7 ground leases from John King and have an agreement with the city, which was all codified, and it is all public record. So once again, let me see if I can go through this for you. Next slide, please. So first of all, I want to provide you with a summary of the Oyster Point precise plan improvements, which were approved in 11. Then an overview of the land cap deficiencies and regulatory permit process that will need to be gone through in order to actually effectuate work out there. We want to provide you with an update on summary of the sea level rise considerations that were taken into account, both the 50-year and 100-year mean high tide levels, and the possible conceptual construction phasing, which of course takes into account that we have to manage the construction with our neighbors in a manner that has minimal disruption to the marina operations, businesses, and folks that live on the boats and actually use their boats. Please. So once again, this is what's there now, existing conditions. Next. This is the precise plan that's been approved. So the plan itself includes repair of the cap, grading, 3 new office buildings of 508,000 feet, new roads, new infrastructure, a promenade and park, new roadways that are all, this has all been very specifically detailed in the actual approvals, and we're not allowed to deviate from this. There are $30 million in escrow. The city of South San Francisco is released to them once we've started the plan, and all those dollars are spent in this area, and also the developer has an obligation to spend an approximate same amount of money. So, next please. These are reference slides and images of the types of improvements that will be made out there. There's going to be palm trees, new beachfront, roads, steps on the water. One more slide, please. And these are actually some of the light fixtures, and sort of, once again, this is intended to be the quality of what's going to be built. Next. So let me go through something that I'm sure is of importance to everybody, is an overview of the landfill and the cap deficiencies. So we did an extensive survey of the entire area, along with a bunch of borings, which are the black marks. The light blue dotted line around it is actually the limits of the landfill area. There are, as you can see, orange, purple, and little tiny yellow spots. And the actual landfill, once again, I'm getting a little out over my skis, but Title 27 is the current regulation that kind of governs how these caps are constructed. This does not comply with Title 27. It was done before then. And what we're doing is actually repairing and replacing to the means and methods that are required by law. So there are 3 deficiencies. Some places it's a shallowness in the actual permeability layer, which is the clay. Certain instances where the actual water resistance, the hydraulic resistance, I don't remember exactly the term, but when you press water against it, it doesn't hold the water as it's supposed to. And the third is where the 2-foot soil level on top is not 2 feet. So all of these 3 locations will be repaired as part of the work. And of course, all work that is done is going to be done when we actually open up and repair and replace. You know, there'll be significant mitigation in terms of misting, dust control, and the work is done in small increments. And at night, everything is either covered with soil or tarps to make sure that it is contained at all times. And next, the other thing that will happen is that when we're grading and or excavating, we'll be opening up the cap. So once again, the same means and methods will be used. Now, I'm not going to be able to go through the actual specifics, but these are the permits we'll need and the regulatory agencies that we'll have to deal with. Once we actually want to start the work, it will take approximately 1 year to go through all this permitting and analysis and approvals. So we estimate that once we want to get going, it will take approximately 1 year to get permits to do the work. And of course, one of the things that we want to emphasize is that the developer, Greenland, of which we're going to be a consultant, intends to be highly collaborative as neighbors and very communicative and open. And of course, this will all be subject to public opinion and review, and we want to be open and make sure everybody's aware of what we're doing. So I can't really answer any detailed questions about this, but this is clearly understood as what we'll need to do. Treadwell Rollo is the firm that we intend to use, and they're actually considered to be an expert in landfill. They did Sierra Point. They're doing the land by Levi Stadium, and recognized experts in California. Next, please. Okay, sea level rise, something near and dear to all of our hearts. When we actually, this is the 50 year, which is the light blue, and the 100 year, which is the dark blue, is the expected sea level rise, which is the mean high tide, which is 55 inches in the year 2100. And if you lay that out against the existing Oyster Point, you can see the fact that a bit of it is inundated. So, now, with the plan that's in place, this is what it will look like in the inundation layers. And the areas in blue are actually riprap and around the surrounding areas that are below the improvements. Next, please. Now, here are some sections of the 50 year and 100 years. You can see how it lays out against the planned improvements. In this case, the Pond Promenade, right where Oyster Point will come in. One more, please. Now, something that's probably of also great interest is how this work would be effectuated. Now, the actual construction phasing has not been detailed, and it is subject to a great deal of design and scrutiny, and obviously, this is an example of one way it could be done. It's fairly logical, but this has not been defined specifically. So this is the existing roadway, streets, and trails, which we have now. Okay, next. These are the demolition of existing buildings and paving that will take place as part of phase 1. Next, please. These are the landfill cap repair replacement that will occur in first phase fairly immediately. The next one. Then the new roadways will be put in. And once the new roadway is in, then we will switch the traffic off from the old roadway to the new roadway. And then we'll demolish the old streets, and we'll start making the new landscaping and parking areas and pavings, and as well as working with Bay Trail improvements, which is part of which actually surround the entire site. And then last, the grading of the building pad areas, as well as playing fields, as we're going to be actually part of the plan is to create playing fields and green spaces adjacent to the property. And once again, last and not least is the actual construction of the Phase 1 buildings. So that is essentially, I think that's kind of it. And of course, that's what it should look like at completion. So nobody's asked any questions, which I'm sure you might have some. So that's my summary presentation. If there's anything I can tell you, please let me know.
So you went through the slides kind of quick. Could
Yeah.
you go back?
Oh,
to
sure,
the-
of course.
The beginning?
Nobody was interrupting me, so I figured I'd go
Very
quickly.
beginning.
So maybe not the very beginning, but, so this slide, back one. I have a few questions. Does anyone else want to ask questions first? So, I've never seen this before. Is it possible for us to get a PDF of this presentation?
Yes, of course.
Okay, great. It would have been nice if we'd gotten that in the board packet, but I know you guys were probably working on it. So I know you mentioned that you don't have a lot of specific information about phasing, but it seems pretty important for us to understand the phasing since it's going to have huge impacts on our tenants and also the visitors and the commuters.
Of course.
So how are we going to be able to get that information?
Well, as any self-respecting good developer, there's going to be a great deal of community outreach. This is a very significant property and project that is above and beyond sort of a typical project, especially dealing with the landfill. So as this process starts, I mean, obviously the regulatory approval is one thing, but how the actual work gets effectuated, the specific phasing will be something that will be open to public, and we're going to be working collaboratively with our neighbors to make sure that the plan does work and does minimize disruption. So when I say it's not been defined, it's not part of the actual approval, what's been codified under the law, and it's a TBD, and of course, it would be very much to our advantage and your advantage to do it in a manner that provides the least disruption of any to operations.
So what's the public process? What's the plan for that?
I can tell you how we would typically do it, and is that we would have a series of community meetings to talk to constituents, understand their concerns. We intend to be meeting with the biotech community, neighbors, and everybody, and let them know what the plans are, make sure that, even though this is public record, we don't expect everybody to be reading this, to actually have community outreach and try to get people excited with what we're doing, have them become supporters of it, and find out what their unique interests are, what their concerns are. Make sure that we can, allay them. So it's a community process.
So at this point, then, I guess what I'm confused about is you have indicated that this plan is what's approved in the EIR, so there can't be any deviation.
Correct.
But then on the other hand, you're saying that there's going to be this public process that would allow for changes to the plan.
No, not for changes to the plan itself. We're not allowed to deviate from that.
Okay.
Or the money if we don't stick with the plan, I mean, this was when redevelopment was being collapsed, and but we can't mess with it at all in proper Stein English here. And what has not been determined is the actual way the work is executed, the phasing of it. Not the work itself, but how it's done.
So the public process would only be about safety concerns and phasing and scheduling? Or what would the public, if the project's already been determined, and I understand already went through an EIR process, so that makes sense to me, then I guess I just want to be really clear on how the developer's going to be working with the district and the public to address, I mean, the project is going to be a complete disruption of everything. So how will that be
Well,
addressed?
first of all, I don't think if it's executed properly, it will be a disruption. It will be a bit of a nuisance, but you should have unfettered access. It won't look particularly nice when you've got a bunch of tractors and stuff there, but, I mean, that's construction, but we have every right, and you have every right to make sure it's executed in a proper manner so that it doesn't adversely affect people living and working there.
So the access will never be blocked, even though the roads that we currently have will be removed. There'll be this new road put in, which is where our parking areas are now. It sounds like the whole level of all the low-lying areas are going to be, there's going to be fill added.
Mhm.
And it just sounds like the phasing is really critical for us to understand. So when would we be looking at a plan for the phasing?
I hesitate to give you an exact date because I'm not sure, but I do know that the intent of Greenland is to commence work immediately. So I would say that there's a period of about 12 months where we're going through regulatory approvals and scoping the work as it's, that we'll have time to have those meetings, whether it would happen in 1 month or 2 months. My guess is that there would be an interest in meeting people and introducing the players and who's going to be doing the work and who your neighbors are going to be, as well as scheduling future meetings and understanding sort of how we can get together people and start keeping them informed and working on a collaborative effort so that we can understand things that we might be doing that might interfere with what you're doing. So we know we have to keep existing roads in service, and then the logical thing is to put the new roads in and then switch them over. I don't know, Steve, if you have anything to add to this, but once again, any good developer is going to be collaborative with their neighbors. So I would guess we'd be over-communicating rather than under-communicating. Better to do that.
Okay. So can we go to like one of the pictures where it shows the landfill, which I thought was really interesting because I hadn't seen that either. So maybe going a little bit further forward in the presentation, there's another landfill shot. Keep going. I think this is it. Yeah, this section. So in phasing the recapping of, since now we know that the whole thing is a landfill, because you showed us that with the blue line.
Right.
In phasing the recapping, is this showing the phasing? These 3 slides showing us phasing? Is that what we're looking at
Well,
here?
those are logically occurring at approximately the same time, and I have to emphasize, these are done in small increments, you just don't open the whole thing up. I can't tell you exactly how many square feet the increment is, but it's done in small steps in order to contain the material and close it up every night.
So the landfill is going to be completely recapped, or only sections of it?
Just sections. Shorenstein and SKS are pretty fastidious as it relates to environmental concerns and things like that, so we did exhaustive analysis on the condition of the cap. We were surprisingly good shape, the sea level rise issue aside. And these are the areas that we know to be deficient now without us disturbing the cap. And of course, we will be disturbing the cap in places that will also be akin to this. And when it's repaired, I can't tell you exactly the process that occurs, but I do know that it's very tightly controlled and it takes a bit because you're doing it in small increments.
And
Sorry.
What year was the study conducted?
I think it was 2000, probably 2010, 2011.
2010?
Yeah, this was approved in July of 11, so I imagine it happened within 12 months of that.
Could we get a copy of the landfill study?
Yeah, what you see up here?
Well, the work that was done that indicates the various areas that, just the whole study that shows all the information about the various areas
I
of the
presume as
landfill.
much, yeah. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what studies we have, but it's pretty exhaustive. I don't know if there's an issue with sharing, probably not.
Okay, so,
Yeah,
okay.
I wasn't sure what was in the public record or not, but.
And which firm did that work?
Wilsingham did the actual survey.
Okay. That would be helpful. I think I'd understand it a lot better if I could look at that. So that'd be great if you guys could send us a PDF
Sure.
file of that.
And we have people in my shop that are far more knowledgeable in the details, so happy to communicate.
I think,
Is it an appendix to the EIR? I'm going to look at our attorneys that represented the city and us that might have the answer, isn't it? Question was, is it an appendix?
It's an appendix to the EIR. It may be available online, but if it's not available online, in which case we can send you a link, which would be easier. If it's not available online, we can make it available.
Okay. Great.
We've
Thank you.
had a really hard time finding the appendix for the EIR. And so I think what would be super helpful is if we could get a print copy of the full EIR, the FEIR, and also the appendix to keep in the office so that, I mean, I definitely want the links and want to see it digitally as well, but if I had a print copy, it's just a lot, you know how these documents are super dense, and it's just much easier to read if you can sit there and leaf through the pages, so.
Like you, I have a hard time finding this online.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure we could accommodate your request.
That would be great if we could get a copy of those documents.
Yeah.
Yeah, this project just makes your head spin when you think about all the change. I mean, it's all work that needs to be done as far as a landfill is concerned. I guess what I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around is how are the old sections of the landfill going to connect to the new sections of the landfill? I'm sure that must be done in other landfill sites. It's probably nothing new. But for people, like average people like me, I would like a little more education on what that looks like. How do you connect the old landfill with the new landfill and make it work? And, how do we explain this from a public safety standpoint?
Right.
Is material going to be, because I read in the EIR that landfill material is going to be trucked off-site. Is that still the case?
I actually think it's actually being used for grading these soil, but once again, I can't speak to that exactly. I do know that we're going to be following the letter of law and very carefully.
Okay, I have more questions, but I heard
Oh,
that.
I just had one
Go ahead.
comment.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that during your discussions and your negotiations with the city of South San Francisco, that these issues about the landfill and sea level rise have been discussed, right?
You could say that's correct.
Yes, so I thank you for working with them, and I'm sure that this information is public as well.
Yeah, but if we could make it easier to find,
That would be.
happy to do so.
But I agree,
Yes.
it is very difficult to find the information.
I have to
But
ask
thank
people
you
where
for-
things are too, so I'm with you.
So, I guess if we could get more of a schedule from the developer too, because it sounds like you guys want to get going right away, and if there could be some sort of a schedule provided to us so that we know what the public outreach process is going to look like and what the communication process is going to look like with our staff, so that we really have a good sense of it. Maybe there could be a calendar, and then we can alert the public about their various opportunities to meet up with the developer and ask questions and that sort of thing. So that kind of schedule, I think, would be really beneficial to everybody. And then, so is that something that we'd be able to get?
Of course.
Okay, great.
I mean, I don't know if we're going to get it to you in a week, but
I
we're good.
understand.
You have our commitment to be highly collaborative, schedule meetings, and make sure that it's inclusive.
Okay, with
Well-
plenty of notice and all of
You know,
that.
you won't get a notice a week before the meeting. There'll be
Great.
plenty of notice.
Okay, great. And then regarding the health and safety plan and the disposal plan, it's my understanding that the Regional Water Quality Control Board, and I'm sure you're dealing with like a zillion other permitting regulatory agencies, that they require this health and safety plan and the disposal plan, and that they can't really move forward with the project from their perspective until they have those two documents from the developer. What's any news about the timeline for when those documents are going to be presented to the water board?
Well, as you know, as somebody would describe it to me, there's, issue with humans, issues with fish, and then there's the other agencies. I do know that this is the sort of the limit of my expertise, is that the actual process for preparing a plan and permitting it and going through these 5 separate agencies takes approximately 1 year if we're going as fast as possible. The exact documents that are produced, what's produced, when it's produced, I can't speak to, but I do know it's a somewhat laborious linear process.
So could we, I understand that you don't have all that right now.
Mhm.
Could we, I think it's important for our staff to understand that process. And is it possible for us, I'm sure someone's creating a matrix for the regulatory process. Would it be possible for us to get a copy of that matrix so that we can see the schedule for the process?
I think that simple chart 3, 4 deep by 5 wide is sort of the matrix, but I can't really, what you need is a schedule attached to it.
Exactly. Kind of like you would see a construction schedule, but this
Mhm.
would be the regulatory schedule.
Yeah, once again, I think that it would be simple enough for us to tell you what the process and procedure is for moving through those various steps and agencies and.
That way
permitting.
we can allow the public to know if they have some question or comment that they can look at that matrix and they know who to talk to regarding whatever their concerns are.
I'm looking to the attorneys over there to understand whether that is a public process or not, but once again, we intend to be open book. That's the only way to do it.
My understanding is it's all a public process,
Yeah,
so, yeah.
It is.
And I think normally that's something that's pretty standard to have a, schedule for that regulatory process.
I
especially-
presume that, yeah, it's got to be steps and what we expect. In order for us to know, it takes about a year. Somebody had to have thought up through the schedule. So yes,
Okay.
once again, I'm not intending to be glib or, making light of it.
It sounds like it probably already exists if you're planning to go right away with the project, so maybe it's just a matter of finding a PDF and emailing it to us.
Yeah, and if it's not already existent, we can certainly produce something.
Okay. And then like a similar schedule for the corresponding public outreach meetings, that would be really helpful too. I think I mentioned that already.
Yeah, and I think that we should be talking about what is an adequate, would you like at a minimum, how much notice you would like. We do have a fairly lengthy schedule ahead of us, so I think that we should be able to collaborate on a mutually beneficial schedule.
So one of the things that was a little confusing is I read in the newspaper that the developer was responsible for recapping the entire landfill, but then I heard that that wasn't the case, that the developer's only going to be responsible for recapping part of the landfill. Just so that I clearly understand this, is the city going to be recapping part of the landfill, or is the city not doing any recapping? Who is responsible for recapping?
Let me see if I can answer this, and then Steve and Zane can pipe in. It is a single project that gets executed, and we have there are requirements that we do certain scope of work, which is delineated in the public record. The city's responsible for a certain scope of work. I don't think it details who's actually constructing the city's component of it. We know that we have to do certain parts of it. So who is actually executing the entirety of the work as DBD, but I do know that at a minimum, the developer has requirements to do some of the road work and to pay for very specific items. And I think that it would be easy enough for us to pull out of the public record the actual detail of the dollars and the actual requirements to do the work. Was that? I probably should have just let Steve talk to this
Okay,
before I
sure.
said something. Yeah. That would have been smarter to do.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Mattis. I'm the Assistant City Attorney. The agreement is set up, as Paul indicated, where there is shared responsibility for portions of the clay cap repair. So if you look at the map that's behind you, yeah, that assumes I can use that ball, thank you. The area towards the point itself is within Phase 2C. So if you go from essentially the ferry terminal out, maybe a little bit to the left of that, that's 2C under the design plans. And as Paul indicated, it's all part of a combined development, but the responsibility for 2C is with the city as is specified in the agreement, and it's not the entirety of the cap. And then the responsibility for the clay cap repairs to the west of, really kind of just west of the ferry terminal, are the obligations that the developer will be actually implementing as part of their proposal. This is all a combined ultimate project, but the responsibility allocation, the cost allocations are set out very specifically in the agreement as between the redevelopment agency, the former redevelopment agency, and I want to be clear when I'm saying city, I really mean the former redevelopment agency, and the developer itself.
On one of these, because there are 3 versions of this map, does it show the area that's to the east of the ferry terminal that the city would be responsible for as far as the landfill goes?
I think we can produce that. It doesn't, I don't think Paul has a graphic here this evening that shows that, but we can produce that and provide that to the district.
Okay, I think that one of the things that would be super helpful for everybody is if we could connect the footprint of the area to the, whoever the responsible party is for doing the work. So if it's, say, the landfill, you know, it sounds like a section of the landfill is the developers, another section of the landfill is the cities. If we could see a map that shows what the footprint is for the city and what the footprint is for the developer, I think that would be super helpful.
Okay.
And not just for the landfill, but also for the improvements, whether it's a road or a play field or whether it's a building. And I know we went over this briefly tonight, but it's a little vague. And I think if we could just nail it down with a map that, or a couple of maps that make it super clear, that would be really helpful. That way, if we have a question about one area, we know who to contact with the question. Because at this point, I think it's unclear who to contact with the question. I know I was having
Right.
some trouble
We
with
can
that.
provide that. The disposition and development agreement between the agency and the development team has very clear site level maps that show the area and who has responsibility, and there's actually a cost allocation table in the disposition and development agreement that also specifically identifies those improvements that are the responsibility of the developer versus those that are the responsibility of the agency. So we'll be happy to provide those to the commission.
Okay, that would be really helpful, thank you. Let's see. So with regard to the tenants, and this might be more of a question for our staff, when and how will the district inform the public about the project? And is that something that our general manager is, this is a question for you, Steve, expecting that the developer is going to be responsible for communicating with our tenants? Or are we going to hear from them and then our staff is going to communicate with the tenants? I mean, what's the process for that?
And I would have to say that I don't think the details of that have been worked out. As Paul mentioned, the schedule for some of these meetings is yet to be developed. And I'd be happy to work with SKS and Greenland on the best and most efficient way of getting that word out. Certainly, we've got bulletin board at the Harbor Master's office. We send statements on a regular basis to all our tenants. We certainly put stuffers in there about upcoming meetings. And we've worked with SKS and Greenland on that.
I think what you can count on us is over-communicating rather than under-communicating, whatever that is deemed appropriate by all of us. I mean, this is interesting because you have tenants and people that are resident, living, boating, or working there. So as a matter of course, we would have always be doing that. And then in this case, there's a commission that's underlying or overlying it, however you want to describe it. So I think that it's easy enough for us to do both. It's not a huge number of people or businesses, so I mean, we're used to dealing with maybe more dense cities and things like
Right.
this. So we're used to dealing with very large groups of people that don't like to read mail or answer phones, and they usually complain that they haven't been given notice. So we've developed means and methods to make sure that doesn't happen.
That would be great, because I think the unique thing that happens with marinas sometimes is that the tenants oftentimes are absentee. So sometimes they pay for their slip a year in advance, so they don't check monthly billing statements because they've already paid. And so the challenge is, how do you communicate with those people who only communicate with you and aren't used to receiving information?
If you could provide us, I mean, we're going to want a database of addresses and names of every single person that's there, real or otherwise. Once again, a lot of times you're communicating with people who aren't even there, but you could help us with getting names and addresses so that we can make sure people are notified and either doing it by email, phone call. Like I said, it's not a huge number of people, so there's no
Yeah.
excuse for not doing it. As many methods as we need.
Okay, that's good, thank you. So I had a few questions for Steve recently, but he didn't have enough information to be able to answer some of those questions at that time. And I'm not sure who the appropriate person is, so whoever wants to take it on. Is there going to be some sort of compensation provided to the tenants if they feel that the project is creating such a nuisance that they can't continue with living in Oyster Point or having their business there or having their boat there? Is there a plan for addressing the hardship that the project might create?
There's a plan for making sure that doesn't happen. Once again, I don't mean to be glib, but that's not going to happen. We're not going to execute work in a way that provides people from having quiet enjoyment. That's one of those underlying tenets under the law, which we intend to abide by.
Okay.
You might not like looking at tractors and things like that, but everybody will have unfettered use and they should not have any interference with what they're doing.
So if and I appreciate that comment, so I don't want to take anything away from it, but if we were to lose tenants related to the project, how would the district be compensated for that loss? Already, we don't have excellent occupancy as it is, and I'm concerned that if we were to dip down below what our current occupancy rate is, which I think is about, what is it, Steve? 70%. That would really put us in a bad situation. So, what assurances do we have that, that's not going to be a problem and that we're going to be compensated if we start to lose occupancy?
It's a difficult question to answer. People can sometimes be a little odd about what they consider to be a problem or whether people are using things as an excuse. I do think that people will come, people will go. I mean, if we're doing something that is causing a problem, we'll rectify it. If somebody decides that they don't like the look of tractors versus what's there now, I can't say that's something that falls under our purview of, compensating. But what we would intend to do is to provide your tenants with a look of what it's going to look like in a short period of time and how much nicer it will be. So I'm probably not an adequate answer to your question, but typically in development there are things that people don't like, some like. Whether somebody's losing a view or they don't like noise, the work will be, we have to be very careful about noise. This is something that we hold our contractors to. We have to make sure that our contractors are communicating weekly with constituents. This is what's going to happen this week. This is a course of conduct we use with our contractors, so people are made aware of what's going to happen before it happens. Once again, I don't think we're going to be doing anything that will cause a hazard, health, or an impairment of the use of the space. And actually quite a bit of it is upstream from them, up on by where Oyster Point and Goal, and they all meet. But that's what meeting and trying to figure out how to phase it properly and to create minimum disturbance comes in.
Okay. So who would pay for the district's legal fees related to working with the city and the developer on the various issues that may come up during this project? And maybe that's a question for Steve. Have you thought about that?
Well, with regards to the next item, the lease assignment, we've got that taken care of. That was provided for in the two leases. And the process from this point forward and seemed to be tied up in the 2011 MOU, and we agreed to that MOU in 2011, and that MOU included compensation to the district, which we have received.
Right, and that was $2 million.
Correct.
And legal fees can really add up.
Yes.
So, I mean, is that a concern you're considering?
I'm hoping that the process will be collaborative and we won't need a lot of legal fees, but I've not considered compensation for legal fees, no.
Doesn't that seem like something we need to think about?
Legal fees are a part of the course of doing business. I'd certainly be happy to be directed to sit with SKS and see within any of the context of the existing agreements that we have entered into, there is room for that.
I think the point is, though, this is not the normal course of business. What we're talking about is a big project occurring, and there are a lot of unknowns, right now. And
Right.
so it seems like it would be appropriate to, you know, have a plan for, you know, what to do in the case that there is some issue that creates the need for a lot of legal fees. I'm just a little concerned, because I don't know what's gonna come up, and I would hope that wouldn't come up, of course. But looking at our legal fees, it's definitely something that we need to be careful about. And so I think maybe you can't fully answer that right now, but I think it's something we need to give some serious consideration to.
Yeah, and I think if there's cause for a claim, I mean, I think that's one thing. And I'm veering off into areas that I don't understand as well as the lawyers in the room. But if there's cause for a claim, that's one thing. I think it's important to remember we assigned the lease, we entered into the 2011 MOU. We're not actually going to be a party to this project once we're at that point, once they're at that point. We're going to be a neighbor to the project, we're not a party to the project.
I realize that, but I think it's very a simplistic view to assume that there aren't going to be legal fees in this process. So
Right.
I just think it's something that we
Yeah.
need to
And if we-
give some
yeah.
thought to.
Mhm.
Okay. And so, yeah, I think that's important. So what are the financial benefits for the district for transferring the leases in addition to the $2 million? I'm just trying to understand, this isn't a question for you. I'm just trying to understand this better. I was not here back in 2010 or 2011 when that MOU was signed. So I'm really coming at this from a place of not having a lot of information. And so I'm wondering, like, what's the benefit to the district, and what are the short and long-term financial benefits for the district?
Well, the short and long-term financial benefits. I think, well, first of all, we probably have to define terms, short and long-term, and I think what we've got here is a 2 or 3 year project. If that's short-term, then probably not any financial benefit. Long-term, if we continue to operate the marina, I mean, we know that we've only got 10 years left on it, but I would like to think that with a project like this, it could be that our occupancy and the type of tenants that we have in the marina, plus the capital project plan that we've laid out for the next 5 years, would lead to greater occupancy and potentially higher birth rates. So I think that, you know, there could be an upside, but I'm just postulating at this point.
So I understand that the district, well, that the recommendation from staff right now is that we not move forward with the bait shop lease because the situation is too unknown
Correct.
with regards to the project. So, you know, I see that as a loss. I also am concerned that it doesn't appear that there's like any, like at Pillar Point Harbor, we have retail space, we lease, which brings in revenue.
Yes.
It doesn't appear that there's any retail space for us to lease out from this project. That we're not getting anything that we can actually generate revenue from at all. And so I'm wondering about that.
Well, I would think that, in the future, one of the things to look at is that bait shop site, but I think I'd have to dig into the details of what they're calling the Community Facilities District that's going to be formed between the city and the developer, and find out whether that is in the future. I think it's important to note that I'm going to take a wild guess, and maybe Jim can, Jim Merlo, our assistant harbor master over there, is in the room this evening. Revenue from the bait shop, when it was last operating, was in the neighborhood of $1,000 to $1,200 a month. So we're talking about $12,000 to $14,000 a year.
Right, and that's always been a problem for the district, that we haven't generated much revenue from, well, very little revenue from our land-based leases. And I'm talking specifically about the bait shop and about the yacht club. I mean, the yacht club, we're getting what, $100 a month or something?
Oh, no, it's way more than that, Commissioner. I think it's $300.
Okay, $300 a month. So, that's a big building, and we're getting $300 a month, and then we're not making, now we're not gonna make any money off the bait shop, which frankly wasn't a big income producer in the first place. It just seems like nothing has been included in this plan that is of value from a revenue generating perspective for the district. Can that be corrected? Because it seems like we didn't get a very good deal here. I'm just concerned.
I would have to defer to others with greater history on the EIR and the approved project. I think Steve Mattis.
Just let me speak to a little bit of that. In the 2011 MOU, the agency did commit, has paid $2 million already for improvements to harbor facilities. We've also committed to improvements for wave attenuators. We've also committed in the agreement to provide up to 40,000 square feet of leasable space at $1 per year rent afterwards. So the Harbor District will be able to develop that and lease that out for the duration of the JPA. And so
I'm sorry, how many square feet was that?
it's up to 40,000.
What does that mean? Up to?
40,000 square feet of commercial space.
So it's not fixed, the amount?
It's 40,000 square feet of commercial space.
Oh, it is 40.
You have up to, so.
What does that
from
mean,
our-
up to?
If you choose to use less than 40, you can, but you have a right to 40,000
Oh, I
square
see.
feet.
Okay, that helps me, thank
And
you.
that's for $1 a year for the duration of the lease. And that's in addition to the dock improvements and the wave attenuators that are also provided for, which are, in the area of $2.6 million, as I recall.
And what is that space about, the 40,000? Because this is,
That was actually a request of the Harbor Commission at the time that the deal was negotiated. Commissioner, to the point that you're raising about the desire to be able to generate revenue.
Yes.
The commission at the time felt, as I recall, that they wanted to be able to have the right, that they had occasionally, or maybe the commissioners can speak more to this, but there had been interest expressed in the land at various times for new leases out there. And so there was a desire to make sure that the Harbor District would continue to have leasable space, really on the improved footprint, if you will, after the construction had taken place out there. And so that negotiation resulted in the Harbor District having the right to be able to control and release up to 40,000 square feet. And the district's payment to the agency is $1 per year for that. What you rent it to on the market is your decision.
Could you show us on here what building that's going to be?
It's not building, it's space within the, so if you look on this diagram right now, I'm going to rough it out because it's not out, but if you go
Maybe we could go
essentially-
to one of the other, sorry, I'd love to see one of the other slides where we can.
With the, one with the
So,
building?
so it's roughly, it's the 1C area. So it's in portions of this right here, and it actually, I think, extends a bit out here as well too. And so the area that Greenland will receive and will own in fee after the transaction is this area in here. And so the remainder of this will still be within the JPA, between the city and the agency. And where the city doesn't build improvements, right now there's recreation improvements anticipated under the plan right in this area right here. Where the city doesn't build the improvements, and the Harbor District will have the right to lease up to 40,000 square feet. And as I said, the Harbor District would pay the agency $1 per year. The Harbor District could in turn lease it, and that will extend for the duration of the JPA. The Harbor District would have the right to collect that rental revenue.
Okay, so for bare land, or what are we getting, what, 40,000 square feet of what exactly?
Well, it would be after the improvements had been installed, so if you recall, back up to show, is it,
Which one?
oh,
Where are we
just
going?
go back to, so the one that actually shows that has the prom promenade. So this one right here. So you can see this is the area that Greenland would be developing. This is the Palm Promenade right in here, and this is all kind of recreational facilities, if you will, and parking. So the development footprints are really kind of in this area with the city's recreation area currently planned here. There's a potential hotel site here, and then there's additional opportunities, I believe, at this end. And so there's 40,000 feet. The agreement that exists between the Harbor District and the city talks about up to 40,000 square feet of commercial.
Harbor-related uses.
Yeah, harbor-related uses. So you'll have the opportunity, we could work with, the city would work with the district to identify that. At the time we negotiated this, the Harbor District's concern was that they had, in the event that they were approached by somebody who wanted to lease space out there for a while, they wanted the opportunity to be able to build that space and generate revenue off of that. And so the city agreed, and the agency agreed, that that's something that could be done for the duration of the JPA.
So I have a question about that. So it wouldn't make sense for the district to build anything there because we only have a JPA that lasts for another 10 years. So that doesn't help us. How?
Well, the
is the city
JPA also
planning-
includes, well, the JPA does include the MOU includes a provision for discussions between the Harbor District and the city for possible modifications to the JPA. In the past, when the Harbor District has leased property, even the King leases themselves, they extend in term beyond the end of the current JPA, and the city has been asked, and in the past has agreed to what we've called a joinder in the past, so that the city has agreed that even if a building was constructed and the term of the lease for that building with the tenant extended beyond the JPA term, that the city would agree to be bound by the terms as well too. I recognize that if the JPA ends, there wouldn't be a reason for the Harbor District to continue to receive the rent should come then to the property owner. But the current MOU does provide for a structure for discussions in terms of the potential modification, which could include an extension. I'm not speaking on behalf of the council here for that, but the opportunity is there for that discussion.
So the 40,000 square feet for $1 per year is forever, or?
It's through 2026, the current end of the JPA.
Oh, for 10 years.
Correct. At this point, it's now 10 years, yes.
Okay. So could that point be renegotiated? Because now that there's only 10 years left, it doesn't really seem like that's going to be helping us. Is there a room? This is a question for Steve. Steve, can you help me? I see I'm struggling here.
Sure. You're looking at three Steves standing in a row here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which Steve are you talking about? Me, Steve?
Yes.
Steve
So,
M.
I think that Mr. Mattis is correct that the MOU includes a provision that provides a structure for discussions between the city and the Harbor District. on, I would say, not just an extension of the JPA, but it provides a framework for discussing what should we do in light of this development for the next 10 years. So I think the JPA contemplates the questions you're asking and, if not expects, at least encourages dialogue between the city and the Harbor District to try and decide, do the parties want to extend the JPA? Do they want to modify it to accommodate a shorter term for precisely the reasons you're mentioning? I'm talking about Section 8. So I think you're raising good questions, and it takes two to tango. So the city and the Harbor District would need to decide mutually that they wanted to make some modifications to the terms of the JPA.
So what is your take on this 40,000 square feet for 10 years for $1 a year situation? I mean, do you have any recommendations you want to make to the board? Are we going to be hearing from you later about this?
I don't have any recommendations. From a legal perspective, it is what it is. It's for the commission to decide what it wants to do with that right, and whether what it wants to do with that right depends on for how long it has that right. It would seem to be very reasonable to say, we're not going to build something unless we know we will be around for something longer than 10 years. But you may decide that you want to build something for the short term. I don't have a legal view on that.
Okay.
We're getting just a little bit wide of the topic here. So the topic was Oyster Point Marina and Park Development Proposal. We've given a very wide license to question and answer facility here.
I have one last follow-up question
All right.
on that, which is for Steve, so that he can finish the discussion. And this is really important information. This is the first time our board has ever had any communication from anybody about this project since maybe 2011 or 2010. And so I don't think we should cut this conversation short. We're very fortunate to have with us tonight the developer, SKS, who I understand is going to be working as a consultant for the developer, and the city. And so I think it's important for the board to learn as much as we can. And we also haven't heard from our staff about this project. So I think, that's why we're having this special meeting, so that we can learn as much as possible. And I'm trying to ask questions that I think we are going to find beneficial in the long run. So I'm not trying to make the meeting take longer than it needs to. So if you could just bear with me for a second, I would really appreciate it. Steve, could you comment on what we were just speaking about? Is this issue of the 40,000 square feet for $1 per year for 10 years going to be coming to the board, or how is this going to move forward as far as a discussion item goes, so that I understand that better?
I think, yes, it would have to come to the board. It would have to be part of a broader discussion about the JPA. Clearly, if there's only 10 years left and we're talking about development like that, it's going to be a cost benefit. In 10 years is probably not going to warrant or justify a major capital investment. 20 years, 25 years might. I think there's a fundamental policy question the board has to answer is, do we want to sit down with the city and look forward past the end of the 10 years and our continued operation over there? Or do we want to let the JPA run out? And I think that's sort of, that's your fundamental decision to make. And staff will take direction from the board as to whether to work with the city on a termination of the JPA in 2026 or a termination of the JPA at some point beyond that. Regardless, even if it's till 2026, I think it would behoove us to look at the JPA, and even if it's, again, only for the next 10 years, clean that document up so that we can move forward and have some clarity about whose roles and whose responsibilities or what responsibilities are whose. And this is where we've sort of ground to halt in the past, trying to figure that out.
At what point is there going to be an agenda item? I'm just trying to understand process here. Is there going to be an agenda item where the board can give direction
Yes.
on changing the JPA?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so that's what I wanted to know. And then the last thing I have is just related to the public outreach and concerns that the public may have about items that are discussed in the EIR. And I know from looking at both the hazardous materials, Chapter 11, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with, and then also the geology and soils, Chapter 9, that there are 12, I counted 12, I might have the number wrong, 12 potentially significant impacts related to both hazardous materials and the issues with the soil. And so regarding those concerns, are those the types of things that are going to be discussed at a public workshop?
If it's of concern, absolutely. Once again, I want to emphasize that there will be a great deal of rigor employed in understanding not only what's there, but ways and means, and making sure it's done absolutely the right way. There's no such thing as a short approach to this. It has to be done, and the regulatory agencies, God bless them, are not particularly lenient either. So we are going to follow the letter of the law. We're going to go through this rigorous process, and if that's of concern, I'm sure that we could make ourselves very available to understand it. There's not, I wouldn't say there's no art to it, but there's science and there's means and methods which have been established by law, which we are duty bound to follow. If anything, we'll go overboard and be conservative.
Would it be possible to hold a public workshop at Oyster Point? Obviously, that's where people are going to want to attend it. And I know there's other parts of this project, right, that are off-site of the area that we have.
Yeah, it actually extends in numerous phases all the way out to the end.
And there's
to the
another
north.
Marina there, so that's Oyster Cove.
Which actually we currently own in Greenland alone, yes.
So I would imagine that those tenants also might be interested in a public workshop process, and maybe there could be one meeting, and I'm just going to throw out the idea, maybe it could be held, wherever makes sense. There's plenty of meeting space, I'm sure, in that area, but so everybody could get together and see a presentation that covers the concerns that are laid out in the EIR in chapters 11 and 9 regarding these significant impacts. Because I know I have a ton of questions about all of that, but I don't want to, it doesn't seem like the right time to get into that because obviously.
Nor am I the right person to answer them, I might add, but.
Well,
yeah.
You guys are going to be the ones coming up with the plan
Yes.
for how to mitigate these concerns.
Of course.
And I'm sure you don't have it all figured out yet, I assume, is that right?
Yes.
Okay,
that's correct.
so I guess.
We know the path we have to follow. We have a basic plan and concept that we believe is going to be the proper plan, but there is no approval of the plans yet. We have to go through all these various agencies, propose, not only show them the science, what's there, propose solution, and obviously they're not going to take our word for existing conditions.
So I think what would be super helpful, because I've already gotten calls from people at Oyster Cove. I actually haven't gotten any calls from anybody at Oyster Point yet, but I've gotten a number of calls from tenants at Oyster Cove who say that they have a lack of information and that they don't understand what's happening or when it's happening, and we're wondering what I knew. I'm like, I don't know anything, but yeah, if there's a way that could happen, and if there could be the experts there that are going to be doing the work to the landfill, the engineers, so that we could see the plan and we can understand it, and we could hear from the people about what they're actually doing. We could see all the maps, and I'm talking about a real thorough discussion about these things, because they are significant impacts, and I think the public deserves to have that level of
Is it okay if I call you Sabrina?
Certainly.
Sabrina, I have a small boat, keep it in San Rafael. I am pretty sure that people in both marinas talk to each other regularly, and it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense for us to try to divide this into groups. We'll have large meetings. There might be smaller groups that want to talk separately. That's kind of, when you deal with San Francisco, for example, there are many fiefdoms. There are 3 on every block, but we would prefer to deal with people as a whole. If we find that there are constituents that have particular concerns, we'll deal with that, and if we need to meet with people in addition to make sure they're concerned. I think that the level of detail and science might be much for some, and we might end up with a broad discussion and say, if you'd like to get into much more detail, we can have a subsequent one. The worst thing for us to do is just deluge people with information that overwhelms them. I think what we want to do is make this digestible, first and foremost, and those that, and there generally are people that are much more interested, such as yourself, in the details. It behoove us to also, if it's a separate meeting or a secondary meeting, but we want to lay this out in a manner that it's, we don't want to scare people, we want it digestible, and we want to make sure that we are allaying concerns. I mean, my guess is there are going to be people who don't want anything to happen. We want something to happen, so you might have conflict of interest in that regard, but I want to emphasize we will be overly collaborative and communicative.
It would be, thank you for that, and it would be very helpful, I think, for people to, because I have also gotten contacted by a couple of environmental group folks who are concerned about, you know, what's going to happen to Bay Trail access. And as I see this project, it is going to end up in improved trail access.
Yeah, that actually is part of the scope of work, is Bay Trail improvement around this, and that's actually also in the public record. I didn't address that, but we are making Bay Trail improvements, swale, you know, bioswales, improvement to the walkways.
I think that is going to be very interesting to the public, and I also think from watching what happens at BCDC meetings in San Francisco with port projects, that it would be really helpful for people to also understand the access points for human-powered vessels, making sure that, you know, that's been well thought out. It looks like it has, but I think that those are the types of things that make people feel better about a project like this too, because they see that it's going to be beneficial to public recreation.
What you're talking about is fundamental, smart, and good approach to development, which is to make sure that people aren't surprised. There's lots of information, and those that are interested in it can have access to that information. Those that want more, I can have access to it. I think this is going to be a very public process. I mean, there's going to be agencies involved, which all under law required to do that. I just want you to know you have our absolute pledge, and I know Greenland feels the same way, to be very good neighbors. And if we're not good neighbors, it won't go very well.
I appreciate that. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Commissioner Corrali.
Thank you.
No, sorry. I love standing up.
No, thanks for your presentation. Thank you. And I have no doubt that you're working closely with the city of South San Francisco, and also you'll be working with our staff as well. So thank you for kind of reassuring the board that it's going to be an inclusive process. But since this is an issue about a lease assignment, I took a look at your financials, and at least the documents that I asked for, that the general manager was kind enough to send to the board, had your financials in the Chinese currency that you're in. And so my question is, given the state of the capital markets today, what are y'all doing to deal with currency risk? And also, given the cost of materials, what kind of hedging strategies are you using to make sure that if there's a price fluctuation in cost of goods, that you can handle all of that? I mean, you're backed by the People's Bank of China, right? At
Well,
least
actually,
from the financials that I saw. But
let me defer to Clara as it relates to Greenland and their
okay,
capacity.
sorry. Thank you.
And obviously Clara can speak to that.
Thank you.
What I can tell you, however, is that when it comes to constructing property, that is something that we do. We inflate costs conservatively. We have
Yeah.
contingencies for inflation. So the last thing you want to surprise is you over budget
Right.
rather than under budget with large contingencies, and this is the science of what we do.
Thank you.
And if I can point out, Commissioner Giancarelli, that we have two items on the agenda this evening. The first is a discussion of the project, and the second item we haven't gotten to yet is actually the discussion of the lease assignment.
Right.
So, I don't
This
know-
was for the lease assignment.
Okay,
Yes.
we're talking
Oh, I'm
background
sorry.
at
Am I-
this point. And
Different agenda.
this is This
Wait,
agenda
what is-
item is a presentation
Oh, I'm sorry,
with
I'm
no
moving
action.
ahead. 'cause
And then
I-
the next item is the
Sorry.
lease assignment.
Okay, so, so do
And
we,
so it seems that Paul addressed your concern about
yes,
overages
sorry.
in materials and construction. But the currency fluctuations, maybe when we get to the lease
Yes,
assignment
I
issue,
had, yeah, that's fine.
Clara could give a
Thank you,
background
Paul. I didn't-
of Greenland.
Didn't mean to
and-
confuse everyone here, but
Okay.
I thought that you brought up some great questions and some great points, so thank you. But
And
those
I-
are my
Commissioner
questions.
Bernardo.
Are you done?
Yeah, because mine is for item 5,
Okay.
my questions.
I'm going to keep mine just very brief. I have questions and comments also. So first of all, thank you, Paul, for the concise summary. I love PowerPoints that are less than 20 slides.
By the way, I have a thumb drive here, so I'll just leave that.
Thank you.
So you,
I'm actually good.
Thank you. You know, as someone who is a former South San Francisco Planning Commissioner, I love this presentation. I'm going to tell you, I'm very excited with what I saw. I know we're not even nowhere near the design review stage or even there. We're still in the conceptual phase. I get that. But I'm very excited because I think that this really, from what I've seen so far, will really transform Oyster Point Marina into the regional destination that we've always wanted, that I've wanted. I mean, I don't know about other, I'm not speaking for other people, but that's what I've wanted, really, is to transform it into a regional destination and actually get people going there and not have it empty. I'm not talking about the people who live there, that's empty, but people going there. I want more people to use the open space there. So here's my question and then my comment. My question is, very early on in the presentation, you said this was approved. When you say that, I assume you mean the Planning Commission approved it. Who approved it?
you want to answer that technically, please?
Was it the,
Yes. I want to make sure I properly
Right.
answer. Yeah.
who approved it?
Zane Gresham, this was approved by the Planning Commission.
Of South San
It was
Francisco.
approved by the City Council,
Council,
and it was approved by the former redevelopment agency,
Got it.
and implicitly, because of the MOU that was entered into with the Harbor District, it was also approved by the Harbor District.
Thank you so much. Okay, that was the question I had. And then just one other, two more quick comments. Typically, I'm sure you know this already, the developer is responsible for outreach, community meetings, setting them up, having a facilitator. You don't need, I don't need to bore you with all that. You know this.
You'll get to know us very well.
Agencies such as ours will assist however we can. I know you mentioned an earlier way that we can assist, and of course we will. I'm speaking for myself, my fellow commissioners can chime in otherwise. But yeah, I look forward to, you know, having our team help you conduct the outreach in however, you know, would be beneficial to everybody. Third thing, I want to bring up the really good point that Commissioner Brennan brought up with regards to communications. Of course, we all know that in every project, 30% of the public will really care. They're going to read every P and Q, cross every T and dot every I, and really look at everything so closely with a magnifying glass. 30% are not going to care. And then the other 30% are not even going to know there's a project going on. So for the 30% that are really going to look at everything meticulously, a communications plan is going to be absolutely essential. Over-communicating to the public, to the internal audiences, external audiences, to the members of the press, city council. I'm sure you have that all laid out. But I do want to reiterate, the communications plan is going to be essential because I just want to avoid this, well, I didn't know what was going on. What project are you talking about? I mean, it's just, you know how it is. I mean, being
Well,
in the
I can-
development world.
One thing I can tell you is we do not know yet the proper way to do it, so we do know that over-communicating is the proper way to develop. So we'll need to develop a communications plan to make sure that we are in fact over-communicating rather than communicating. And that would be a collaborative effort with the city, the commission, the neighbors, I mean, our broad constituency.
Everyone, yes. Thank you, and that's it. I'm done. Thank you.
I thought that was fine.
So I'd just like to make the comment that I've been around long enough that as John Draper and Jim Merlo know, working with Bob McMahon, Don Galuzzi, Peter Grinnell, and now Steve McGraw, this is not a new project. It's been discussed a long time, and long before the first piling was driven for that ferry thing, we heard about all these things. And I'm very happy to hear that what I sat through for 2+ decades is finally have a potential to coming to fruition. So thank you very much for your presentation. And perhaps we can, if there's no other questions, let Clara proceed.
We've got public comment. I think you've got some sorts of public comment on this item.
Well, we're not done with 4 unless you want.
Oh,
to be
okay.
done
I
with 4.
thought when you mentioned Claire, you were moving on to 5 in the assignment.
We have-
I thought,
5 was for.
well, it says green presentation by Greenland on 4.
I think SKS made the intent there was to present the project.
All right.
So,
In essence, Greenland is acquiring all the rights and developments that SCAS Insurance Team negotiated. So the project that been presented is going to be executed by Greenland.
All right, just clarification on our agenda. In that case, let us proceed to public comment on item 4.
Commissioners, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. James Lee Hahn.
Good evening. I'm speaking wearing several hats today. First, in my hat as a former secretary for the nonprofit Save Pete's Harbor, which worked to try to keep almost 200 people in boats and RVs residing in Redwood City. One of our big concerns when a development came in was waterfront access. There's already been development at Redwood City on the waterfront with improved Bay Trail features, but the Bay Trail sign that you see when you drive past is this big. So it's very hard to see unless you actually live or work at the location. You do not know that you have waterfront access there. So I would highly recommend that this board direct staff to ensure that waterfront access is more clearly noticed to the public so that they can utilize what's there for them. I also want to say that, and I'm not sure how the procedure works, if anyone here would like, if you're going to take answers to any questions, but I didn't hear an answer to what the public input was actually for if changes to this plan can't be made. I would also remind people, wearing my hat as someone who's currently at university studying marine biology and wetland ecology, that it's been in the news. If you're under a rock, you wouldn't have heard it, but it's been in the news for everyone else that sea level rise projections are actually too conservative. The type of sea level rise climate change that we're seeing right now is actually way greater than what scientists have predicted. So the 100-year events that you're talking about with flooding, with subsidence, these are all issues that are going to be not 100-year events, but 10-year events, 15-year events. And that needs to be kept in mind when you're thinking about this project. How sustainable is this project? Is this actually going to be a benefit to county taxpayers in the long term, or is it a benefit in the short term? Especially with all the work that needs to be done with the seismicity of the Bay Area as a whole, and with the type of fill that this is going to be built on. These are all concerns that I hope this board is looking at. And lastly, I just want to mention, this is a small thing, the promenade with the palms. I just want to say real quick that when I see palms, I think of Venice Beach, I think of San Diego. I don't think of the Bay Area. When you go to the Palo Alto Baylands, when you go to Coyote Point, when you go to other bay waterfront areas where people go to enjoy the bay, that's for them. It looks very different. So I would respectfully ask that this board consider working with the developer to make sure that this plan is more in line with what the community wants. Thank you.
Sean Cartwright.
Yeah, I'm going to pick up where he left off because I'm from LA. And so when he said when I saw the pictures of the palms, I just started giggling because the palms are like, there's a lot of famous shots on TV that you see, like it's Venice Beach or it's Glendale. Glendale, there's lots of shots that you see in a lot of TV shows and movies, and that's going right up the center of Glendale, like where they used to land the planes on the airstrip. So I just don't think it really fits, but I'm totally entertained by it. And maybe it's a touch from home, so I appreciate that. I had a question about the cap. Is there a way to do this without disturbing the cap and just repairing the cap? Because it just seems like something that, you know, is better left alone. And the hotel, it reminds me, and I don't want to repeat this, but it reminds me of Rich Gordon's pet project of the hotel that was put in, and all the neighbors hate it, and nobody ever wanted the hotel, and they still don't like it. But the people who wanted it, the politicians, they love it, and they have fundraisers there, but still the neighbors hate it. So I'm hoping that this isn't a repeat of that. And I didn't hear anything about how big or how tall the hotel would be. The presentation, by the way, the colors are really hard to see. Like the difference between like blue and light blue was like, I don't know. You really got to be an artist to see those colors. Just a side note there. I had concerns because, and I've worked in planning too, so I get it, but that the schedule seems so unknown, so you're kind of like, well, we sort of kind of approve it based on a sort of kind of schedule. I get it, but it just makes me nervous. And it seems hard to believe that traffic won't be impacted and all those things. You always say what people want to hear, and you always say the good things, and like we're a fabulous company and things are going to be like perfect and da-da-da-da, because that's what people want to believe. But I've been involved with these things for a long time. I've been on the wrong side of these things, you know, and seen how these things actually turn out. So I just have a really hard time believing that traffic won't be impacted. I don't want to see traffic impacted. I don't want to see palm trees there. Well, I do, but that's just, I take sick pleasure in these things. And again, I really don't want to see a Rich Gordon hotel there. That's pretty much all I've got. But you do a fabulous presentation, I'll give you that.
Sorry,
Oh wait, I did want to say thank you very much, because I never say anything nice about you, so I'll give you one thing. Thank you very much for letting us do the questions ahead of time, or at the end, because that totally made sense, because otherwise we wouldn't know what we were saying. So thank you guys for the free speech there.
Item 5 tonight is Oyster Point Marina and Park, assignment of leases from Oyster Point MB LLC to Oyster Point Development LLC. Staff report.
Yeah. Thank you, President Matoush. The request this evening is for approval of an assignment of a lease from Oyster Point MV to Oyster Point Development. These are leases with the district, and let's see. We operate the Oyster Point Marina and Park under a JPA with the City of South San Francisco. We chatted about that a little bit earlier. And under that authority, the district leases certain parcels for various uses. The leases were originally executed with King Ventures and have been known pretty much since then, I think, as the King leases. In 2009, with district approval, King Ventures assigned the leases to the Shorenstein and SKS company, and the LLC is known as the Oyster Point MV LLC. Oyster Point MV LLC has continued to operate the facilities and pay rent to the district in accordance with the leases. Much as in 2009, the district approved an assignment of the leases from King to Oyster Point MV. Oyster Point MV is now requesting district approval of the assignment of the leases from Oyster Point to a new entity, Oyster Point Development, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Greenland USA. As it says in the staff report, we have received a presentation on the project. And I think it's fair to say that in 2009, when King assigned the leases to Shorenstein, there was an idea that the project would be developed. Certainly, the purpose of the presentation before this topic this evening was to suggest that that project is now more likely rather than less likely to happen. But regardless of that, in fact, the issue of an assignment of a lease is a fairly straightforward item, in fact. And it falls within the purview of this commission to determine whether or not the assignee, in this case Oyster Point Development of Greenland, USA, has basically got the financial capacity and wherewithal to fulfill the obligations of the existing leases that are currently, those obligations that are currently being fulfilled by Oyster Point NV, AKA Shorenstein and SKS. So I provided in the package just a couple of the leases. I provided you with a lease to parcel D1. It's with the exception of the numbering of the leases. It's the same as the leases for B and or the E leases. Parcel C, it does have a different form of lease, so I've included that in the board package for you as well. I previously distributed to you financial information, but Claire Tang is here this evening from Greenland, USA, who can more appropriately certainly answer Mr. Chankrali's questions from earlier about currency fluctuations and how that might affect this project moving forward. So with that, I would like to introduce Claire Tang, and so then after we hear from Claire, we can certainly address questions, or staff will answer any questions as may be necessary. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Steve. You might even address the question, because I already asked it, but thank you.
So let me just start by introducing Greenland a little bit. Maybe you guys have not heard about Greenland's name. So we are a Chinese developer. We're one of the largest developers in China. We were established in 1992. We're currently on the Fortune 500 list, ranked 258 in 2015. So we have a balance sheet of over 90 billion US dollars, and 2015 our total revenue is about $30 billion. Okay, and then right now we have 22 million development overseas, and we have projects all over China in about more than 80 cities. And then we are in 9 countries on 4 continents, including the United States, Canada, Australia, Japan, and other countries. So in the United States, we came in 2013, and we signed 2 contracts, one in LA, the other one in New York. The LA project is called the Metropolis. This is in the heart of downtown LA. The land has been vacant for about 30 years before we took over. And right now, we signed the agreement in January of 2014. We broke ground in June of 2014, and right now, phase 1 is almost done, which includes a 350-key hotel, and then also include a residential tower with 308 units. And then phase 2 is going strong. We're estimating to complete the remaining 2 towers in 2018. And then for the New York project, this is a bigger project for us. It's about $6 billion total investment. We're working with Forest City, a large U.S. developer, and that project it sits on 22-acre in the heart of Brooklyn, and it has about 6,000 units in total, mixed income units. Also include about 1.3 million of commercial spaces, including office and hotel and retail spaces, and also includes 8 acres of open space for public access. So all in all, Greenland is very strong financially. As you mentioned, we have the backing of the major banks from China. We're also establishing relationship with the local banks here in the United States. So as any developer would do, we have strong equity support from our headquarters. We also have our equity partners like Ping An Insurance, which is in the board package, and then we're also going to raise debt financing for our project locally. So the currency exchange issue that you mentioned will have, majority of the financing will come from the debt, as you know, the capital stack. So that's how we would address that. Okay.
And then what about the cost of materials, if the fluctuation in the material costs, the actual commodity, if you will?
Yeah, as
How-
Paul,
how-
yeah, as Paul mentioned, you know, as any development project goes, you know, this Oyster Point project is gonna be a long-term project.
Right.
You know, you can't really hedge, you can't really know the cost of material at this point
Right.
for the next 10 years. So what we do is we diligently working with our consultants and contractors to, and then develop the design and then make sure that we have the contracts and mechanism in place before we actually building, start the construction. And then, you know, I don't want to go into details of these, how do we do these things, but these are, you know, there are ways that, you know, we're building contingency in our original plan, and then as we have the construction documents, then we can lock in those pricing with the contractors and subcontractors for the construction period.
Okay.
Okay?
I mean, I might add,
Please.
when you build, all materials are sourced, I'm sure it's all domestic products, steel, concrete.
They are gonna be American made?
Most likely.
Okay.
I mean, there's going to have concrete, different places. We're going to, the contractors and the subconsultants that are in the Bay Area, we go out to bid to them and they source products. So we will hire a general contractor and then there will be subs. So this is no different than any project that we build other than the size of the project. We're building in inflation,
Well,
actual
yeah.
material costs, and significant contingencies.
Right, because I'm thinking of contingencies over time. This is such a big project. Your LA project, I think it was LA, you did stuff in 2013 and you started building in 14, right? So I was just wondering how y'all were going to deal with the time risk too. And you've answered my question, so. But I'm just a little concerned about the commodity risk, because I know this is a big project, right? So it's gonna.
That's the development risk.
I know,
Yeah, that's
I
the
know, I know.
developer's risk.
That's, yeah, no, I get it. I
Yeah.
get the risk. Okay, thanks.
We're experiencing the big way with all the construction.
Yeah, I know. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Commissioner Brennan seems to have a question.
My question might be, I'm not sure who the best person to ask is. It may be the city, but you guys can decide. I guess I'm trying to understand the process here. So we're transferring, so basically what we have are leases where okay, so we're managing Oyster, I'm trying to understand this. We're managing Oyster Point. The city owns the land. We don't own it. But we have leases that we are subleasing. Would that be a good way to explain it? To SKS or Shorenstein? Is it Shorenstein or SKS right now?
What's green?
Okay, it's both. So so we have this management thing going, then we are leasing to SKS Shorenstein jointly, and now they sold their whole plan to the Greenland people, and so now they need to transfer their lease to Greenland. So why can't they just sublease to Greenland? Why do we need to, why is this necessary? I guess that's what I want to understand.
I'm going to turn that over to somebody more experienced in answering that question like that.
And Steve can supplement to this too. So the JPA gives the Harbor District the right to lease the property, and that's what the Harbor District did. The city actually consented to the King leases because the King leases have a term longer than the JPA. What Greenland is doing now is proposing to purchase OPV's, Oyster Point Ventures, Shorenstein SKS's, interest in the project. So they would actually be the leasee under your agreements. And so they are actually acquiring it and would then step into the shoes that presently are filled by Oyster Point Ventures MV, which is Shorenstein SKS.
So they can't sublease from Shorenstein SKS, or they don't want to?
The level of investment that is going into this project and the structure of the deal, because the structure of the deal with them is that they're actually ending up with fee ownership
Right.
of the acreage. Greenland, and Claire, you can speak to this, but the investment and the significance of the investment that Greenland is making is necessary for them to then have the fee ownership of the property that's being conveyed to them.
Okay.
So it's not just a matter, you have king leases right now, but when this project moves forward, a portion of the land that is presently within the JPA actually gets removed from the JPA, and the fee ownership of the land goes from the city to Greenland at that point.
And so that part I'd like a little more clarification on, because I don't understand it, and I'm sure the public doesn't. So that would happen at a later date. So this is sort of a temporary situation with this lease transfer, and then, and how long are these leases for, by the way? 'Cause you mentioned that they're longer than the JPA, correct?
I don't forget exactly. They go, Zane, you recall, are they 10 years plus?
It's at least 10.
There are several, so they go many years beyond that. I could look at it, I'm just not remembering.
Okay, so
they,
there's opportunities to extend the lease within the lease agreement?
There are extension options in the
Okay.
lease, yes.
So at some point then, when the land is removed from the Harbor District's jurisdiction, not tonight, but another meeting or whenever, there's going to be a decision to give up part of the land that we manage, is that?
That decision has already been
It's been
made.
made.
That's in the Harbor District
Did you
city agreement.
You read it.
So that decision to have the land come out of the JPA was made in 2011 by all of the parties.
Okay, so when would that happen?
That is going to happen when the redevelopment agency conveys the property to Greenland, which it will depend on Greenland's development schedule, but if as Greenland and Paul have indicated tonight, that they're moving forward over the next 12 months to get their regulatory approvals, and then we'll be commencing construction. They will be commencing construction on the area that will be conveyed, so that conveyance would happen within the next 12 months.
Okay, and so how will the city be, because I know we've talked a lot with the representative from SKS tonight, but will the city also be conducting public workshops about all of this so that the public?
The city will be working with the developer and with the Harbor District, because the city has if you will, a co-equal interest in the impact to its residents. And so the city will be very much interested in the staging and the scheduling and making sure that the roadways remain open out there. Greenland will have to work with the city's engineering department in addition to working with the Harbor District staff to make sure that that is all very coordinated.
And who will be the contact with the regulatory agencies? Is that the city or is that the developer who's talking to the, because you're talking about this one, you keep bringing up that 1 year period where you're trying to get all your ducks in a row with your permits in the regulatory agencies. Who will be what group of people will be communicating with the regulators?
So the lead on that would be the applicants making the communication, so Greenland and their team would be the lead. The city often gets consulted by the regulatory agencies on that. We are also, as the lead agency for the environmental impact report, we're going to be making sure that the mitigation measures are being implemented as part of the project. So the city will be in its normal regulatory fashion with a land use project, and we will be making sure that they've complied with all their conditions of approval, all of the mitigation measures that are necessary, and we will also be responsive and interacting with the regulatory agencies as necessary. The city isn't actually the lead applicant for the regulatory permits, that's actually the applicant.
And if it comes up that, through the permitting process and dealing with the regulators, that things have changed and there's new information about sea level rise and the amount of fill necessary, or say a group were to show up and they, were very adamant that there wasn't enough access, for launching the dragon boats, or I'm just throwing out like what ifs. Is there flexibility where those things can still get addressed? Or is this thing set in stone and no?
Well, the project itself is fully approved by the city. And the project actually includes a development agreement, a land use development agreement, which gives the applicant vested rights to proceed with this development as it's been proposed and approved by the city. And so they have the right to proceed with it now. They will have to secure approvals from the other regulatory agencies. And
such as BCDC.
BCDC, the regional board, but I would prefer Clara and Zane to defer those questions to you guys.
The key regulatory approvals that remain are the ones that relate to the health, safety, and welfare of disturbing the landfill and actually improving the conditions of the landfill. Other regulatory approvals have already been received. So as Mr. Mattis indicated, this project is fully approved and ready to proceed. Certainly in the course of dialogue, there can be opportunities for accommodation, but as a matter of development rights, this project has been fully approved.
So if, say, the public was weighing in with BCDC, what you're saying is that it's already gone through the BCDC design review process, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So then they would be weighing in with BCDC on health and safety concerns or things like that?
They would be, whichever agency has jurisdiction over the particular matter. BCDC does not normally
do health and safety.
Do the health and safety.
Yeah.
That's not within their.
So it would be the air quality, or it would be the water board?
The Bay Area Air Quality
Yeah.
District, the Regional Water Quality Control Board, the Corps of Engineers. Those are the agencies that would be more likely involved, and their focus would be on air pollution, water pollution, and the like.
Okay, that helps me understand it, thank you.
Right.
We're coming in late, because I wasn't here in.
And this is a project that took many years to put together with much consultation with all the agencies. So it's easy to understand that it requires a considerable amount of study to come up to speed.
Thank you.
Commissioner Paravano.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the lease assignment between Oyster Point MV and Oyster Point Development LLC, and authorize the general manager to execute documents as necessary.
Okay, the one thing we haven't had is our public comment. Should we hold off our second on that?
I still had a couple questions too, so, that were for
Well, I'll
staff.
second the motion, so we can do public comment and we can continue the discussion.
Okay.
But I'm fine with waiting to do my questions after public comment. I don't need to go now.
All right, Greg Sanchez.
My name is Greg Sanchez. Most of you know me. Maybe this isn't the right meeting because I see a lot going on, but I've been trying to open Oyster Point Bait and Tackle for a long time. I put a bid into Oyster Point Bait and Tackle under the impression that we would talk about how to make this happen, and I was never notified other than my bid was not accepted. And I just want to know how to move forward because we'd like to get in there, and if we could have some sit-down meetings and reach an agreement somewhere, because apparently you have nobody else even interested, at least not Oyster Point Bait and Tackle, other than me. And so I'll just kind of bring it forward on how we can kind of sit down and negotiate on how we can move forward into opening Oyster Point Bait and Tackle to get the time to sit down with whoever draws up the agreements. I mean, we thought that we would sit down with them because we had the impression when we were there that after the bid was given, that they would sit down with the people that put in the bid and we would discuss where we go from there. It was denied, it was never discussed, and I don't understand why. So Maybe I'm at the wrong meeting at the wrong time, but you guys do big things. To me, this is a big thing in my life, so that's why I'm moving forward and trying to figure out where we can move forward from here and how we can make this happen. And we're willing to sit down and negotiate with everybody on how to move this forward. So I don't know if this was the right time or not, but every time they say something about the leasing at Oyster Point, I come to all your meetings. I've been here for 2.5 years, and we still haven't reached an agreement with the lease. And like I said, you have nobody else but me, and I would like to reach an agreement with you guys and know what more would you guys like us to do to move forward. That's about it.
Be beyond our agenda to discuss that, but I'm sure the general manager will address that with the board at the proper time. Sean Cartwright?
I just wanted to know how much noticing went into this, how much notice went into this meeting, it being a special meeting. And I just think that this meeting should have been held in South City. Summer just started, and I think there should have been a lot of notice given for this. If there's no harm in waiting, you know, say 2 weeks or whatever, then there should be a lot of notice given. Hold this in South San Francisco. If there's no penalty that's incurred, you know, like it's not like any business costs or, you know, permit has to be issued by this date, then I think this should be deferred, and let's take this to a couple weeks. And then the people in South City who it does affect, let them go ahead and see this fabulous proposal and, you know, this PowerPoint presentation that you like so much. And they can see this, they can see the whole proposal, and they can be there for this because it truly affects them, and it should be done there. Thanks.
James Lee Hahn.
I just wanted to thank Commissioner Brennan for asking salient questions. I know it's made my public comment previously shorter. It's going to make this one shorter as well. And unfortunately, the camera is on the speaker's face, but I'd like to ask the commissioners to please keep in mind that commissioner questions are not of benefit to just the commissioner, but to the public here listening as well. I learned a lot about the lease through these questions. And so especially to Commissioner Chang Corelli, it would be nice if you wouldn't talk over questions, if you wouldn't say, you know, that answer's so obvious, we can hear you. It's very easy to hear you, even if it's not picked up by the camera. With regard to the lease itself, I'd just like to say that I agree with Ms. Cartwright. From what I heard from this board, there seems to be a majority consensus that communication is key. It seems like it wouldn't be too much of a problem to defer the approval of this lease until the regular meeting of this commission on July 20th in the regular location. I think that would be a great way to start off. Obviously, there were meetings that the city already had with approving this project, but as you can see here, I don't think there's anyone aside from the gentleman who's trying to open the bait shop who's from South City, and this is a long way to come over the hill. I know I came from Redwood City. So it would be really nice, I think it would be a nice show of support for the community if this commission would consider tabling this agenda item, and not because there's anything problematic about the lease, but just to show the public that, that transparency is key and that you feel that way about the community. Thank you.
Commissioner Brennan.
Thank you. So I have a few questions here. Can we, I don't really understand what we're transferring. Can we get a description? I know we've got the stuff in the board packet, but can we just get a description of the square footage, or could you point it out on the map so that we can see what we're transferring?
there are 5 E parcels, E1, 2, 3, and 4, and that's basically this sort of chunk here. We've got parcel, Steve, Matt?
Excuse me.
Oh, thank you.
Just, it's in the board packet on
Yes.
page 37 of 154.
Thank you very much, Steve.
This map, this is the map.
Okay, well, let me see if I can.
You could
But I also,
Okay.
I think,
Great,
I
thank
think
you.
there's a list of the parcels too.
Yeah.
So this is parcel C. Parcel C,
Yeah.
parcel B, parcel D1, parcel D2, parcel E, E1, E1, parcel E, E3 is this dock that Craig's Marine uses, is E4. And then we're getting into other parcels over here that are not part of the discussion this evening.
So it sounds like it's pretty much everything. What, okay, better question is, what is not included in?
It's on there. Is there any way to project this actual map in some way? Because the letters are on, the parcel letters are on the map.
Right.
I don't know if you can do that.
You know, the
though.
map is really hard to read.
Yeah, I know, it's hard to read.
Yeah, hold on a second.
I have mine highlighted.
Yeah.
Well, it was helping to have these pointed out, but.
Item, is this on item 4 or
Item 4.
This is from item 4?
Right.
Okay.
Page 37 of 1.
Yeah, but
No,
even
that's just a
page
snap.
40,
It's actually 95.
Okay.
I have 37 and 154 too.
Is this one of those ones where she combined them all into one file?
I think, it doesn't matter, I mean, we have, them, but if you want to just use their map, Steve, and just point it out. I just thought for the public it might be easier if
Yeah.
they could see the actual parcel letters,
Yeah.
which are not only on the map in our board packet, but listed in our board packet too.
What page is the list on? Sorry.
Page,
37.
no, that's, the
Change?
map is on 37, but the
There's
list
the key for the password.
is on,
Jesus, that's what I
part of
need.
the list is on 43 of 154.
Why is 25?
It wasn't loading because I was getting the wireless from downstairs.
And then, where's the other report? There's a whole list. Oh, here, 23 of 154, which is the front page of, the first page of item 5 in the staff report. So the 3 leases for parcels B, D1, and all E parcels, which are E, E1, E2, E3, and E4. So it's basically on the first page of the staff report. But the map is helpful because it gives you a list of all of the parcels. And so to Commissioner Brennan's question, parcels A, C, probably D2, F, G, G1, G2, and H are not included in here, in the leases.
Here we go, I'll go on. See, this is not from, it's the
It may
same.
not even, it's hard to, yeah, but you've had,
There we go.
yeah.
So here are the parcel maps. So C,
A2, right, A is,
B, D1, D2, E1, E, E3, E4, or E2? E2 is this one right here. So here's the road coming in. Right, down to the roundabout here. So basically, these parcels here.
So, where did this map come from? Because this is different than what I'm looking at in the packet, right?
No, this is the same map.
It's slightly different from the one in the package. It's the same information. It's the same parcel map. It's over the course of the years, this is just one I happen to have on my hard drive because I wasn't able to access the board package online.
So the only difference is that the legend on our parcel,
Yeah.
board packet map is a little different. The legends and the parcel acreage is.
Okay, so it would have been really helpful if we had gotten a map that really clearly defined which parcels, and that's not happening with this map, so.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I would, if I could have done it any more clearly. So we're talking about B, D1, E through E4, and C, and these are all in the board package.
I wanted
page
to, I just want
37
to
of
like mark it on
154.
the map, so included in the transfer is C,
No, I don't
Is
see.
B,
It's
B,
E.
C,
It's right
D1, and E, E1, E2, E3,
oh,
and E4.
slow down, slow down. Okay, so E1, E2, C, B, did you say
No,
No.
A? No, and you said D1, right?
yes,
D1, D2,
not D2,
not D2?
no.
Okay. And then, so I've got C, B, D1, E1, E2, and then you said E3 and B4?
Yes.
E3 and B4.
First page of your staff report,
Yeah.
on the first page of the,
Yeah.
it's also in the exhibits.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and is that all? That's all?
Yes.
Yes, as it says in the staff report and the request for assignment, yeah.
So it's nothing, nothing east of the harbor master's office?
Well, technically speaking, this
Oh.
portion of that one there extends east.
Okay,
Harbor Master's office is right there,
but that's it?
but there's not these parcels down here.
Okay, all right, that helps a lot. So now I have a better idea.
Also
Okay.
listed on page 24 of 154.
Yeah, some of them are. Does the transfer have any legal or financial impacts on the harbor district?
Well, the legal impact, I would leave to District Council to answer. The financial impact, no, it's the assignee will assume all of the obligations of the assignor. The assignor is Oyster Point MV, AKA SKS Shorenstein. The assignee is Oyster Point Development, AKA Greenland.
And about the legal?
You will be the landlord to a different tenant. I don't know if that's, there's a legal distinction, and if there's a different agreement, that we will be paying your checks.
And is the harbor district, I think we covered this, but just maybe you could explain it one last time, obligated to make the transfer? That's for Steve Miller.
Steve Miller, is the harbor district obligated to make the transfer? So the leases that the harbor district has with its tenant, Oyster Point MV, includes rights and obligations with regards to assignment of the lease. The leases are not mirror images, but both leases, as any contract, requires an implied obligation of good faith and reasonableness, and the district itself is under some obligation not to act arbitrarily or capriciously. So I would say that the legal obligation is to approve or disapprove of this assignment is based on whether that action is reasonable or not, and whether there's a basis in the record to support such a reasonable decision.
And then, what impact or what will the impacts be if we did not approve the transfer? Just what would happen?
Legally?
Yeah.
It's hard to predict. I would imagine that the assignor, the current tenant, and the proposed assignee would presumably not be pleased as to what legal issues could result from their displeasure. It's hard to say.
And this is my last question in this group, and then I have just two last things. What is the impact if we approve the transfer?
You're looking at me again? The impact if you approve it, it's not a transfer. We are consenting to the assignment from one tenant to the other. We're not doing any transferring, but the legal impact of, ask your question again, what's the legal impact of approving the assignment?
Of approving, yeah.
I can't think of one.
Okay. And then regarding the location of this meeting, I too was also concerned about the fact that we were having this presentation far from Oyster Point Marina. And I hope that going forward, when we have future meetings that relate to Oyster Point, that we can have them close to the facility so that the public can get there easily and doesn't have to drive so far. And the same goes for issues related to Pillar Point Harbor. I've always said that I really hope that we can try to agendize items that are relevant to Pillar Point Harbor close to Pillar Point Harbor so that our tenants can get there. So I hope that people heard about this meeting, and I'm really glad that PCTV is here tonight videotaping the meeting. It will be broadcast on public access television. Unfortunately, that broadcast doesn't reach the South San Francisco area, but we will see it on the coast side, and it will be archived on YouTube. So the meeting video will be accessible on YouTube. Yes, that will be the case. I see somebody reacting to that. And then secondly, regarding the bait and tackle shop, I'm sensing that there may have been some confusion going on with that. I mean, we put that out for lease and bid, or what do you call it? What do we do?
We issued a request for proposals.
Okay. And I just hope that there can be communication with people who had planned their business model around that location that's prompt and clear so that there's no confusion. I think that this has drug on for so long, and it looked like we were finally going to lease out that space, and I understand now that the district, we haven't had a public meeting where we've talked about that.
Correct.
So I think that needs to get agendized, because it's unfair to the public who may have been interested in leasing that space to not understand or know, what the impacts of this project have on their ability to do that. So I think we need to, get that on the agenda, and also hopefully do it in South San Francisco.
Commissioner Changrali.
So I'm ready to call the question. But I just want to make one comment, because I'm hearing different comments from various people. I just want to remind everyone that this is such, I think, a really great project, not just for South San Francisco, but for San Mateo County, because of the biotech industry. For the state of California, I was appointed by Governor Schwarzenegger to the California Commission for Economic Development and chaired the Biotech Advisory Committee. And I think for the state of California, this is also good, and for our country, because the biotech industry really started in South San Francisco. So I was a little disappointed that this issue became politicized in the media without even discussion with the general manager. And with that, I think politicizing a project in an election year is a very bad thing to do. And I think that this project is so important that it should not be politicized. And so the public comments that I'm hearing today, I think are part of that, and it's their right. But I just want to say that I believe that this project is important enough for us to be on the straight and narrow, so that we can move forward in a positive and collaborative way with the city of South San Francisco to benefit all of San Mateo County. So with that, I'm ready to call the question.
I would like to
And we have a
respond to
motion
that.
and
The
a
board
second.
has a motion and a second.
And we'll call the question.
I'd like to have a roll call.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
I'd just like to state for the record that I disagree
We've
with
called the question and we're doing a roll
Commissioner
call
Chang
vote.
Corrali's portrayal
And
of the
she's out of
communication
order.
that's happened tonight.
President Matoush, she's out of order. We are in a roll call vote.
And I would like to
There's been a second,
respond.
This is-
a motion, a second, and a
respond
To
vote.
the
after. Right
request
now, we're
for
doing
the
a vote.
vote, I am in favor of transferring the leases. So there's my vote.
Commissioner Frawley?
Aye.
Commissioner Gervano?
Aye.
President Matoush?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
I think there's a clarification.
What was that?
The motion was on assignment of the lease.
Yes. For item 5.
Right.
Did you get that,
Okay.
Melanie?
So we're on to item 6 on the agenda, 2016 general election candidate policy form, length of candidate statements and payment for same. Staff report, please.
Thank you, President Matoush. This is a Director of Admin Services item. It's timely, which is why it's on the agenda tonight, but Glenn Lazoff is on vacation. There is a requirement from the County Elections Office. There's a requirement from the County Elections Office, as shown in the calendar attached to the staff report, that this commission determine for candidates for Harbor Commission whether the candidates shall supply a 200 or a 400-word statement, and whether or not the commission or the candidates should pay for that. So staff has no particular recommendation either which way. We do have a comment on that.
So,
So staff has no particular recommendation. There will be a financial impact to the district if the commission elected to have the district pay. Historically, the district has elected to have the candidates pay. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions as I may be able.
well, do we need to make a motion to,
I do have a public comment.
okay, please, on this item?
Yes. Any more commissioner comments? Sure.
I'd like to comment, and did you say you had something, Robert?
No, please go ahead, please.
Just that in the past, we've had 200-word statements, and the district has not picked up the cost for that. The longer the statement, the more it costs, and the more candidates that run, the more the cost of the printing and the mailing. So it seems to me that sticking with the 200-word statement makes the most sense. If 30 people decided to run and the district picked up the cost, that could be quite costly for the district. And while that would allow for more candidates to be able to run competitively, it might become cost prohibitive. So I'm kind of open to hearing from the other commissioners on their thoughts on that.
Commissioner Bernardo.
Thank you. Okay, item 6, as you can see on page 2 of 2, back in June 2014, I was one of the ayes on this, and I still feel the same, and I'll explain why. I don't care if it's 200 or 400 words. I mean, to me, those are pretty arbitrary, so I am not wedded to either, whether it's 200, 400, 600, 800, whatever. Now, the cost is, the way I voted reflects how I still feel. This is an election. Candidates should be paying for this, not the Harbor District or taxpayers, and that's why I voted the way I did. And I was up that year, by the way, so I mean, I could have voted to have the district pay for my own 200-word thing, but no, I paid for it out of my own campaign funds. Yes, it was expensive, but that's the price you pay when you run for public office, you know? If you don't like it, let's have campaign reform. But that is my personal opinion. Public should not foot the bill for a candidate's expenses, which includes your statements when you run for office. So that's just my own opinion, and I will continue to vote the way I did back in June of 2014. So I would support, I don't care how many words, but I think that the candidate should pay. Thank you.
Does anybody have something else? Because I wanted to just talk about the cost for a second, if no one else has a
We
comment.
have public comment. Or do you want to do your?
Yeah, the only
Sure, I can
thing-
wait till after.
Yeah, the only thing I have to say is I'm personally in favor of 200 words, candidates pay.
Could we hear an estimate of the cost? Because I heard the staff had that.
Yes, 200-word statement, $4,794. 400-word statement, $9,588.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry that we didn't already call public comment. I didn't mean to interrupt that.
Okay, commissioners, Sean Cartwright, please.
Surprise, surprise, surprise. I agree with everything that Commissioner Bernardo said. I know. And I appreciate Commissioner Chang Corelli's Brown Act violation.
So I'll make, you have probably another item.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to not do anything, which is essentially, if we don't take any action, then the last action will be taken, which is 200 words and candidates paid for.
If I could just jump in, actually, under the Elections Code, if you take no action, all we can do is say to the, you should take some action.
Okay,
Let's
so
put it
I
that way.
move that we limit our candidate statements to 200 words, 200 word statements, and that the candidates pay their own costs for submitting a candidate
And I'll
statement.
second that.
Roll call.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Crowley?
Aye.
Commissioner Paravano?
Aye.
President Mateo?
Aye. That closes the open part of our meeting tonight, and we're going to have a closed session regarding Government Code 54957, Public Employee Performance Evaluation.
Were we going to have